How you doing, Nadia?
I'm doing well. How are you, Matt?
Thank you for being here. I'm excited to have you as my co-host, sidekick, extraordinaire, whatever your title would be, and talking about the college. A lot of people in high school here, they're probably listening to this, trying to figure out where they're going to college, if they're going to college. So I figured I'd do a quick little podcast on the topic of reasons to go to college and indirectly reasons not to. Nadia, you went to college.
I did go to college.
You went to the University of Alabama?
I did. Roll Tide.
Did you? Well, you grew up you went to high school in Franklin, Tennessee, right? So,
that is right.
but did you go to Alabama for football?
No.
I didn't think so.
No.
Good. But Tuscaloosa is a great college town. I used to go there a lot. Beautiful campus. I went to University of North Carolina a long time ago. Similar. I grew up about 15 minutes from where I went to school. What'd you major in?
So I double majored. I was a finance and economics double major.
Now, why did you pick Alabama?
Good question. Being from Tennessee, I mean, everybody in my high school went to the University of Tennessee.
Go Vols, huh? Yeah.
The orange is
You didn't want to go to Knoxville.
I didn't like the orange. That was actually one of the reasons I didn't want to go to Tennessee, to be completely honest with you.
Makes sense.
But my parents, I mean, they raised us to be super independent and responsible. And they basically said, if you don't get a full ride, you're going to Tennessee. And I was not going to do that. So I took the ACT 6 times. I took it 6 times. I actually I enjoyed it by the end of it. I was like, wow, yeah, let's do the English section. Yeah. And I did actually get the academic scholarship. So I am blessed enough that I didn't have to pay for school, which was really cool. And I 3 people from my high school went to Alabama, and I just wanted to do something new and get away from all the people that I had grown up with, honestly.
Cool. And that wasn't too far. Actually, that's a great backstory to some of the things we're going to talk about. College has become a controversial topic. It's, I'd say probably 10, 15 years ago, there was the storyline that everybody has to go to college, and everybody was taking student loans. And now there's a lot of people that aren't happy with the amount of student loans they have, and they shouldn't have gotten them. And even though the current government tried to forgive them, that's not constitutional. And so it's not going to happen. Sorry, guys. But the point being is what I figured I'd do today was there's been a lot of college bashing lately. And there has been a trend, I think, of people starting to realize maybe they don't have to go to college. At the same time, there's some reasons to go. So I figured I would tell me if this is a good idea, Nadia. We're going to come up with my top 5 Matt Ross reasons to go to college, and indirectly we'll also talk about reasons not to. How about that?
Good stuff.
Okay. Here's my number 1. This actually sort of leads into what you said in my story. I grew up in a family of nerds, if that's hard to believe. They were all mathematicians, chemists, but they all went to University of North Carolina. And my brother used to go to math bowls around the state of North Carolina. He actually placed 3rd in North Carolina, and he applied to MIT and Duke, and he got into both, but he only got 50% paid for it, both of them. So me as a 9th grader, I watched my math bowl champion brother get 50% to MIT and Duke and still go to UNC, Chapel Hill, the state school where my whole family had gone. At that point, I realized I was probably not escaping in-state tuition. My parents had done a really good job saving money, college funds, so it was all paid for. So I went to UNC. Now, here's the thing. I went to UNC knowing I probably would not end up using the degree I got, but this is my number 1 reason for going to college. If you enjoy learning about lots of different topics, getting a good classical kind of humanities education, and you want to figure out what you're interested in, that's not a bad reason, if it's paid for. That's the key. What do you think of that?
No, I agree with you. I think it's to add on to that, the people like us, because I'm like you, I love to learn. I loved school, and I loved actually learning about things that I wanted to learn about. Because in high school, you don't get that opportunity. You get the chance to learn how to learn, how to teach yourself things, and how to study, and how to use those skills and carry those on for the rest of your life. That was how it was for me, at least.
I majored in history, doubled in economics, and I got a minor in Japanese. I took 8 semesters of Japanese, and went to Japan. I also took a ton of English classes because I liked reading books and stuff. But Yeah, I got a good education there on a lot of different topics. Once again, I kind of went into it not expecting that this knowledge would translate into X amount a year income job. That was,
Right.
and I guess my problem with a lot of people nowadays is the belief that what you major in college is going to totally correlate with what you're going to be doing the rest of your life. That's just nonsense. And I feel like it's promoted down the chain. It's even promoted now in high school that you have to figure out your major by the time you're either enter school or your freshman year, and whatever you decide is going to impact your life for the next 50 years, and that's nonsense.
Yeah.
When did you pick your major?
After into my freshman year.
See, and that's how it used to be more. I feel like I travel around to lots of different campuses, meet tons of young people, and I feel like it's rare now to meet a freshman who's undecided. That used to be like more the norm.
Yeah.
So that's first point there. Number two kind of goes ahead and gets. I've already talked about it needing to be paid for. Well, maybe we'll cover this one real quick. I do think, and this happened a lot starting probably around 2010. I think during the Obama administration, but the whole push that equality of opportunity, that's a good thing, but basically leading everybody to believe they have to go to college. Therefore, you had a bunch of kids taking out student loans to go to a school like Arizona State. No offense if you live in Phoenix. It's not that hard to get in, and you can get once again a fine education in the humanities and learn a lot of cool stuff. They're business school, you can learn stuff there, but you shouldn't be paying or taking loans out for $25,000 a year or $30,000 a year to go to Arizona State. That's absurd.
Agreed.
You graduate with $100K in debt, and you're going to be set back for the next 10, 15 years, and it's a real problem, especially if you're doing something like majoring in
history and Japanese.
Exactly. History, Japanese, or economics outside the business school. Great. So this kind of ties into my next reason to go to college. And this is where I always differentiate a lot of times college and if it's a good choice or not. And your field's kind of in the middle, but I'm going to say if you want to be a STEM major, you obviously need to go to college. That's a great reason to go to college. STEM being science, technology, engineering and math. Yes. I should have.
That's that history.
I should have let that roll off my tongue better, because I'm going to speak so confidently on it.
Just say it in Japanese.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't remember any of that. I took 8 semesters. It's all gone.
But that's important too. You don't remember any of the 8 semesters of Japanese that you took, and have these classes that if you do end up going to college, you will have to take. You genuinely don't use a lot of those things.
Or you don't remember them, or you're going to have to go to grad school anyway, or you're going to be taught it on the job. Yeah,
totally.
But if you want to go into the STEM fields, if you want to be a doctor, if you want to be an engineer, you want to do something in math, computer science, you obviously have to go to college. And those people that go in with that major, different category than people that show up out of state, pay $30,000 in student loans a year, and have no clue what they want to do, and end up majoring in history or psychology. So that's one. What are some other good reasons to go to college? Here's one. Once again, if it's paid for, and if it's not paid for, I think community college used to have a bad stigma to it. It's actually a smarter choice. It makes way more sense to go to 2 years of community college. It's the exact same classes that they teach at Franklin Tech, or what's that? Columbia State.
Yeah.
Columbia State's the same classes that kids are actually taking at University of Tennessee at Knoxville. Some reason people think because it's at Knoxville, it's better. It's not. It's the same gen eds. If you're going to if you can't pay for school, you should go to community college for 2 years and maybe figure out what you want to do there, and then transfer in. It's going to say, once again, if it's another good reason to go to college, is I do think it's a great life experience. It can be. Was it for you?
It was. I had a really hard freshman year.
Tell us about it.
So I was, I ran track in high school. I did this and that. I was in student council. And like I said, everybody that I went to high school with went to the University of Tennessee. I hardly knew anybody at the University of Alabama. And this is very Southern specific, but Alabama is a Greek life school.
It's
and I think that's something else
too.
we need to talk about. Yeah. I hate to say it, but if you don't do it and you don't find something else to get involved with, it's very hard to get involved.
It's lonely.
It is. It's lonely. And that's how it was for me my freshman year. Thankfully, I actually roomed with a girl who was from Franklin as well. And I met a ton of people through her eventually. But I had to get over my ego that people didn't like me. This idea that people didn't like me because I didn't join a sorority, because I wasn't paying $4,000 a semester.
Did you ever consider it, by the way?
I joined on my sophomore year.
Okay.
And I'm glad I did, but then I ended up dropping my senior year.
That's typical.
Yeah,
you got the social life, and then you want.
Yeah, and I met like some really great people, and I was convinced that I needed to do this because, again, Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, it is important, air quotes, that you get involved that way because it's just such a big deal there. And I've had this conversation plenty of times, but other ways that I could have gotten involved that I look back and I'm like, okay, I could have done this. There were so many different things that I just should have pushed myself to do, but I had to eventually learn to do those things. And I did join clubs and I did get involved, but I needed, honestly, I don't think I'd be the person I am today if I hadn't gone through such a lonely year that first year. So,
this is actually a topic I want to transition into. This is great. I want to get your thoughts on this because I do think college is a great sort of transition from high school to adulthood. And, that used to be, I think, maybe more so because the typical thing was you met your wife in college or your husband and often got married shortly after. It's a little bit, people are getting married later now or not getting married, and it's different. I was stunned. Once again, I went to school 15 minutes from my house where my family had all gone. And I knew the campus like the back of my hand. But the thing I love the University of North Carolina sports programs. I don't really like the university, to be honest. I like our football and basketball, but the university I don't have fond memories of for the first 2 years. But here's my point. Did you feel this way? When I came to college, I was really active in high school. I played 3 sports and I took hard AP classes, and I was busy all day long. And I was like a machine. I did not have any time for anything, and I loved it. It was sort of like all day long you're trying to be, compete against your classmates. You're busy. You feel good. You feel like you have a niche. You feel like you're successful. The thing that stunned me my freshman year at UNC, and once again, I was taking like history classes, English, some random stuff that I thought would be interesting, and some Japanese probably in there, was all the time I had on my hands. I was like, is this it? Like, we go to like 2 classes a day, and the rest of the time, like maybe I'm supposed to do some reading for the Wednesday class in 2 days, but there's like, what else? What are we supposed to be doing? And once again, if you're going to go into engineering, probably this is not going to be your world. You may be taking 15 hours in Calc 3 or all sorts of integrated math. But for me, I had so much time on my hands, and I really at that point understood the phrase "idle mind is devil's workshop," because I was like, all right, I got to find some stuff to fill my time. And I do think this is can be a negative of college if you do not get seriously involved from the get-go in lots of college type activities. Is if you are bored and you have too much time on your hands, what can that lead to? I went from being a successful high school badass to somebody who was forming bad habits in lots of different ways. I'll put it that way. And I do think a lot of people I think college sometimes can actually take people who are on a good schedule and form good habits and are doing all the right things and kind of help them rot. Now, it was all my fault. I'm not saying it's college's fault, but it is something to think about as far as when you go there, is making sure you don't pick up bad habits or bad influences. A lot of people are also worried about sort of the influences of their kids when they go to college now. It's been a thing since the 60s.
That's another thing, just getting out from becoming independent can be really difficult. And with the time, you're completely right. I actually figured out how to beat that and how to change that because I had nothing to do.
So what'd you do?
Well, I was typically taking like 15 to 17 hours every semester, but I love school. I've always loved it. I loved what I was learning. By the end of my probably junior year, I had this system worked out every single week. I would start my workload Monday night, Tuesday night, from 9 a.m. to 6 or 7 p.m. every day. I was doing work and I would knock out all of my work for the entire week by Wednesday night. For the entire week, I was done. All I had to do on Thursday and Friday was go to class, and that's it. Because I'd written all my papers, I'd done all my assignments, I'd done everything, and I stuck to my schedule. And people were always like, after I had made friends and figured that part of it out, they were like, "How do you have so much time? Like, you can?" And I was like, "No, I'm done with everything." So I had Thursday, all day Friday, Saturday, and Sunday to relax.
Interesting.
And it was great. And and that was me though. I was like, I'm just going to hammer this. I'm going to get it done.
And you always went to class?
I always went to class. Actually, I had a weird college experience because COVID happened my junior year. Yeah, my junior year. So we actually transitioned to virtual, which is how a lot of classes are nowadays too.
And you still always went to those?
Most of them.
Yeah. That's something you hear a lot about. That's sort of what I just referenced, killing people's habits. It's amazing the lack of attendance on Zooms. It's, even though it's easier, you can crawl out of bed and get on a computer. People do it less, and I think it's not as healthy, obviously, for them because they sometimes never leave their place.
It makes it even lonelier, though, really. And it's very easy to be like, oh, I would never do that, because I think a lot of you guys who are looking towards college and thinking about it, like, this is the future. Ever since that, we all know everything is becoming virtual. My little sister's at Alabama now, and so is my little brother, actually. And they still have the option to do virtual classes on Zoom. It is very easy to fall asleep while you're listening to a professor talk about supply and demand.
Or not pay attention.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not going to lie. Like, I graduated with a great GPA. I did fall asleep multiple times while Zoom classes were happening. And I didn't feel good about it, right? And I don't think most people would. But I had to make an effort after a while of that. I had to make the effort to actually go to class. And it made me feel better. And honestly, it made my professors feel better too, because half the time, not even in 2020, but afterwards, they were teaching the empty classrooms because people were choosing not to go to class and just watch them from their beds.
I think that's important. I'll talk about this in a future podcast, but it's amazing. In high school, I actually, sometimes I'm embarrassed to say this, but I never missed a day of school. Now, it's not because I was such a good kid. That was partly it, but I was busy. You had to go to school if you wanted to play sports, and my mom worked at the school. And so it was never an option, I thought, to basically not go. When I came to college and I lived in the dorm, it became very easy to, skip the drama 15 class at 8 a.m. and, clear out more of my morning. So, yeah, if somebody's going to be in college, they obviously, it's so important to go to all your classes and to avoid some of the pitfalls. So, I will summarize some of the things that hopefully people take from this podcast. Let me say it this way. I think some dumb reasons to go to college are anything that involves going to a out-of-state school, if it's unless it's Ivy League, and if you're taking out massive amounts of loans to pay out-of-state tuition. I think that's ridiculous. I think going to college just because you feel like you have to, because society told you to, I don't think that's a good reason. And I also think it's dumb to basically think you have to go to 4-year school, the first 2 years, especially if you don't have the money to pay for it. Any other dumb reasons to go to college you would think of? Well,
I actually want to comment on that with the payment. Obviously, my situation is a little different. Not many people will take the ACT 6 times with the writing section. There's so many ways to go to school for free that people just don't know and they don't think about.
How can they find out?
It just takes work, honestly. It's scholarships. There are so many scholarships. One of my favorite teachers of all time was my high school AP psychology professor. She was one of the most brilliant minds that I've ever, had the pleasure of meeting. And something she said to me that stuck was, if you can take an hour or two every single week, this is my junior year, an hour or two every single week and apply for 4 scholarships. Doesn't matter what they're for, but find them and take the time to do it. You get $500 here, you get $1,000 here. It adds up so
There's all
quickly.
That money out there.
There's so much money that people don't know is out there. And something my parents, I actually really wanted to go Ivy League.
Mm-hmm.
I did. I did the tour of all the schools and this and that. And actually, I ended up, I was like, wow, okay, I could be here with some of the most brilliant minds of my generation and pay $70,000 for the same degree that, honestly, other people are going to
It's the same classes.
It's the same classes.
It's just the influence in the network. Yeah.
It's the name, it's the label. And so basically what I decided was, you know what, if I'm going to get my master's degree, then maybe I'll look for an Ivy League and then maybe go that way. But if I do go to do my master's, I'm going to get it paid for.
That's a great transition. You're good. This is working well, because my last point on this was I want everybody listening to this to understand the huge difference nowadays between graduate programs and undergrad. Obviously, if you're going to be a doctor, it's med school. If you're going to be a lawyer, it's law school. But really, any program, grad school is more important now, and it actually has some more, I guess, causative effect on basically how well your opportunities once you get your master's or your PhD. Undergrad, a lot of people don't know this. You can major in English and still be a financial advisor easily. You can major in English and go to law school. That's what most of them do. You can major actually even in history or minor in Japanese, and you could apply to pretty much any grad program with the exception of maybe the medical ones if you didn't have those prereqs. But my point is, your major in undergrad, if you're going to pursue a career that's going to require a grad program, often your major in undergrad is not 100% the deal or that important. And if you really were going to seek out an elite school, it should be your grad program school, not just undergrad, if you don't have it paid for.
And vice versa, right? Yeah. It's like what you do in undergrad doesn't necessarily correlate to graduate school. Same thing. However, I will say, if you are going to grad school for like film studies or something, go to community college, pay the $50 and take the class. Don't do that.
Don't do the $50,000 a year
Please
to go to USC.
Do that. I'm begging you.
All right, this is a wrap. I think this is good. I hope you guys took something from it. Fun conversation. We will see you next time.